Hey guys, how's it going? So, the Republican controlled House of Representatives in Michigan just passed a 2A gun ish bill. It's called House Bill number 4025. And I have my friend Brendan from Great Lakes Gun Rights here to talk about this and a couple other important things. How's it going, Brendan?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
So, with the Republicans taking majority of the Michigan House, and we need to make this clear up front to everybody, the Democrats do still control the Senate, and they do still control the governorship. We've had high hopes that the House would come in, make a statement, let us all know that they're different than Democrats, and start repealing a lot of the previously passed gun control as soon as possible. Is that how you look at it?
Yeah, I think that's what was kind of portrayed is that they were going to change how things operate in Lansing the last 2 years. And of course, you can actually talk about how things have been operating in not a great condition for the last decade or so in Lansing. There's a lot of Republicans who are, you know, billing themselves as advocates for change and certainly talked about rejecting the Democrat agenda that they rammed down our throats the last 2 years. You name it, every left wing crazy idea that you can think of, they rammed through the legislature. I mean, there was a handful of things they didn't get through, but certainly gun rights, the assault on the Second Amendment was a major one. You look at the four districts that Democrats lost in 2024. All of those are higher propensity gun ownership districts in the state of Michigan. And the gun rights issue played majorly in those districts. So to try to, act as if the Second Amendment is the second tier issue for Michigan voters is just not really looking at the facts.
I agree, and I have a lot of viewers from Michigan that would agree with what you said as well. So I did a video last week, and you've been doing tons of posts on. Make sure you guys, by the way, are following Great Lakes Gun Rights, Facebook, Twitter. You've been doing tons of information and trying to rally the troops about a red flag repeal bill from Representative Jim DeSena. And like, I support his repeal bill, obviously, right? And we were hoping that this would get a good committee hearing. We still are, a nice, fair, thorough committee hearing, and get to the House floor. But instead, it seems right now, and we're still hoping we'll get there with the red flag repeal soon. But right now, the Republicans in the House decided to push their first 2A bill as the substitute for House Bill 4025. Um, Real quick, I'll just tell people what it is if you weren't watching my live stream last night. It's basically going to exempt the Michigan sales tax from gun safety devices. These are like gun locks, safes, things to lock your gun up, which I would note the Democrats passed a radical storage bill into law 2 years ago, went into effect last year, requiring many of you that you have to use these locking devices with if there's children within the home, if the children could come in the home. It's very draconian. Well, now they're saying that this is a Second Amendment bill. That's how it's being portrayed. They're going to exempt the sales tax on safety devices. What's your thought about this getting passed through the House?
Yeah, we can have the debate all day about whether or not this is good and sound policy. I mean, obviously during the gun control fight back in 2023, this was the icing that the Democrats put on the turd sandwich, if you will, of trying to make their gun control bills not so nasty. Well, we're going to force you to lock up your guns and leave yourself defenseless in your own homes. But hey, at least we're giving you a tax break on it. And of course, the initial tax break on it was temporary. So now they're coming back with 4025, and it's 4025 and 4026. It's a pair of bills. One is 4025 is sponsored by anti-gun Democrat Natalie Price, and then Republican State Representative Brad Paquette sponsored 4026. So it's a pair of bills, basically to put in place a permanent exemption on the tax for safety devices. So, you know, of course, for gun owners, we can view this as a okay, it's we get a tax break that can be viewed as a good thing. We can also get into a philosophical view of it. Well, this is further entrenching anti-gun views. This whole idea that we have to be scared of guns and they all have to be locked up, or the world's gonna collapse. My biggest beef with it, and Micah, we've talked about this, is just the pure politics of it. You have one of the first gun-related bills, the first gun-related bills, passing through the Michigan House of Representatives, which is Republican-controlled, sponsored by a radical anti-gun Democrat who just for the last 2 years voted for every single form of gun control imaginable that passed through that chamber, and showed absolute disdain for her gun-owning constituents. And for the gun rights community, for gun owners across the state, look, we can have the discussion about this bill, whether it's a good bill or a bad bill. But when the Republicans are giving legislative wins to anti-gun Democrats who for the last 2 years abused legislative procedure and rammed all sorts of anti-gun nonsense down your throats, to then have the Republican majorities just say, "Hey, we're going to let the Democrats pass a gun bill," uh, it boggles the mind, and it just shows you that once again this Republican majority is not showing that they're really paying attention to what's going on. It's reminiscent of what happened in 2023 at the start of the session, where we're singing "Kumbaya" with the Democrats, Republicans were, and then of course the Democrats were playing for keeps, and our side was playing checkers, junior checkers, while the Democrats were playing chess.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And I think about the messaging here. So remember, this is the main sponsor for 4025 was a Democrat. This passed in the House, by the way, 96 yay votes and only 11 nay votes. So here's how I look at this. We're going to have nail biter elections here in another year and a half. We need to flip the Senate, the governorship, and then get a majority in the House of Second Amendment supporting Republicans. The Second Amendment supporting is the most important part of that sentence, Republicans. And I'm looking at it something like this. There's a close House race, and the Republican's going to say, vote for me to protect the Second Amendment because my opponent here is anti-gun. And now I think this gives the Democrats tons of messaging to say, no, I'm not. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I voted to exempt your gun locks from sales tax, and this is really boosting Democrat messaging. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a part of it. When uh, this is why we champion and advocate for putting legislators of both parties on the record with tough votes. The problem with these kinds of votes is that they're ultimately skirt cleaning. They allow bad politicians to get away with bad things. And unfortunately, there are some gun groups out there who are not as principled, who will give inflated ratings to even Democrats for voting for nonsense like this. I've seen it done before where, a Democrat just voted for assault weapons ban in a different state, and then a different bill comes up to do a sales tax exemption or something like that, and they all of a sudden get, from an F up to a D, and as if that's some kind of an improvement. So again,
Yeah.
this is the kind of politics that are being played in Lansing, and sadly, the politicians, our elected officials, think that people aren't paying attention, and so that's why it's crucial for folks to watch your channel and other gun rights channels to really know what's going on, to read good, conservative leaning media that's going to tell you what's really happening in Lansing.
Yeah, man, I hear you, and I appreciate all you're doing on social media. And I'm going to leave links to Great Lakes Gun Rights, by the way, guys, and a couple of his social medias down there in that pinned comment. So make sure you go down in the comment section and check that out. Look, here's kind of where I'm at with this. It's kind of like I kind of have mixed emotions in a way, to be honest, because if I could somehow just take this bill in a bubble and put it in a vacuum, I'd be like, okay, well, I think taxation's theft. I am all for reducing taxes. Okay. And I guess like if somebody wants to buy a gun lock or a safe, I guess, okay, they save 6%. If I can just like separate it from everything else, I guess I'm cool with it, right? But it's hard for me to separate it because we just had a law pass in Michigan recently that's mandating many homes in the state to own these devices. So that's kind of like in my craw. And also the fact that of all of the things, like we need to repeal some of this insane gun control. I'd like to them to start with, say, Jim DeSantis' red flag law repeal. And they put this up first. It's kind of like, man, guys, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. That's our beef too. Is that again, we had a lot of bold talk. We're going to undo the Democrat agenda, And then literally this is further entrenching the Democrat agenda. And now I'm not saying that the Republicans aren't going to hold hearings on red flag repeal or on other bills.
Yeah.
It's very possible they will, and we will. I will go speak to the chair of the various committees, and we will get gun owners involved to encourage the committee process. But this is how things start. The status quo is the most powerful force in politics. Inertia. It's the the legislature wants to do nothing. They don't want to do anything that ruffles feathers. And in their minds, well, we just got this precious majority. We can't do anything to put that majority at risk. Well, what we know is that for about 10 years, Michigan Republicans did nothing to ruffle feathers, and they ended up losing majorities. And now we're looking at on here again. Look, every single Republican voted against red flag. To throw up a bill to repeal red flag is not controversial. What was controversial was them passing a law to allow the rights of law-abiding Michiganders and their lawfully owned property to be seized without due process. That's the radical thing, and that's what we need to continue to hammer away, is that repealing red flag is not radical. Passing red flag was radical, and the only right thing for Republicans to do. Look, I get it. It's not going to become law this year.
Yeah.
There's a lot of naysayers online, the keyboard warriors. I'm just going to call them out,
Yeah.
who are sitting behind their keyboard and naysaying, oh well, Jim DeSantis just wasting our time. It should only file this bill and it's got a chance to pass. You'd be upset if they were doing nothing. And look, the politics is not a zero sum game. There are always things at play, and if you are not pushing to the extremes, and Republicans or Democrats for that matter aren't pushing to advance your rights, even when they're not in the position to do it, you're losing because the other side is pushing the other way. And that's why we work with legislators like Jim DeSantis and others to introduce bills to repeal red flag, to pass constitutional carry, to repeal pistol registration, even when there's not a chance to for them to become law. We want the vote on it. We want to see where everybody stands on it. And also it gets it in the minds of the political class that we're not going away. We want these laws gone, and we're not going to go away all because the government is divided right now.
Yeah, I agree. And here's how it is for me and a lot of my friends around Michigan who are staunch Second Amendment supporters. We need to see that this Republican controlled House is different than the Democrats. We need to see that there's some hope so we can rally all of our family and friends to get out to those polls and try to give the Second Amendment supporting Republicans the trifecta here in a couple years. And it's all about the messaging. And if the Republicans, in my opinion, they need to improve their messaging and they need to do the things that they promised people would do, that they would do. And they need to remember one important thing. They won. Don't act like you're afraid right now. You just got done flipping the House, which was a really big deal. So act like you won, push forth, defending the Second Amendment. I think it's going to work out well for the Republicans in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want to say one more quick thing because, look, for all of my Second Amendment defending representative friends that are watching, because a lot of the Michigan House of Representatives does watch this channel. So hello to all of you. Look, I'm not mad at you guys that voted for this, okay? It's not that I'm mad because a rep voted for this. I don't score this as a anti-Second Amendment vote. I want to make that crystal clear. I just would encourage a lot of the rank and file reps. I get it. This was put on the board. You were sitting there on the floor. You're looking at it and you're like, well, I'm a conservative, so I want to reduce taxes. I think this is pro Second Amendment, I guess. And you voted for it. Like, I get it. But I would like to see maybe, from the bottom up, if that's what it takes, encouraging the leadership within the Republican controlled House to start pushing forward meaningful Second Amendment bills. Where are you at with that whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we were neutral on the tax exemption bills back in 2023. There are so many other things going on that was the least of our concerns.
Yeah.
And again, it's the politics of it. I had someone, another keyboard warrior who was naysaying, saying that I was taking a terrible take on this bill, and I was honest with them. Look, this isn't about the policy. This is about giving an anti-gun Democrat, Natalie Price, the opportunity to pass a bill through this legislature on a gun issue. And she's doing a victory lap now, going to all her left wing groups. I think she was on the Daily Show even, trumpeting this nonsense. Why are we giving our enemies political wins? It's mind-boggling. It makes no sense, especially when we're saying, "Oh, we're gonna stick it to the Democrats." Well, we haven't so far. This is more of the same business as usual. Now, again, if Republicans wanna do right, if this was all part of the plan all along, that they're going to hold hearings on red flag repeal,
Yeah.
great, we're with you, and we're going to be getting gun owners mobilized in support of you. But please bear in mind as well that if you don't, you'll also be hearing from gun owners.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. I'm anticipating, I'm anxiously awaiting, but I'm gonna trust but verify. It's just the way it has to be. I'm hoping that this is in the works right now to get Representative DeSantis' bills into a proper hearing format onto the House floor. I'm hoping, I'm encouraging, and if you guys can pass this through the House, I'm talking to the Michigan representatives here. A lot of people are going to have your back for that. I think with good messaging, it's going to pay off very well for you guys and in the near future here. So we're all on the same page. No hard feelings, reps. We're still cool as long as you're cool with the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Well, and the stuff that's coming out about how the red flag law is being used too. I mean, Detroit News has had a couple good articles on how, the red flag law is being used to red flag children, which just turns into a household red flag, where not only just the child who is subject to the red flag law. Yes, first of all, if they're a gun owner to begin with, that's something.
And
But
they're sick.
then they're just taking all the guns out of the house. So literally, it's a household red flag. And of course, the Democrats are saying, "Well, that's exactly what we planned." I mean, this is outrageous. That this is how this is being applied. You have the Detroit Police Department red flagging their own officers. Was that part of the plan too? What's the mechanics of that? How does that work out? And this is a year into the law. And of course, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we were warning people about. But then again, we didn't really get a chance to testify, anyways. So,
Yeah,
that's where it'd be nice to have a committee hearing to actually hear the other side.
yeah, let's talk about that. I had you on this channel a couple of years ago, actually, and at that time, this was before everything had completely passed per se with these red flag laws. You and Michigan Open Carry, Great Lakes Gun Rights, and Michigan Open Carry were working together with a certain type of lawsuit because of alleged violations of the Opens Meeting Act. Can you talk about that real quick and give us any updates?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it was really the brainchild of Tom Lambert of Michigan Open Carry, who's solid Second Amendment attorney here in Michigan. During the committee hearings back in 2023, the gun rights community, not just the gun groups, but gun owners in general, were almost entirely locked out of the committee hearings. I mean, they were allowing a couple token gun owners to testify, but then it was like 10-1, 20-1 anti-gunners to gun owners.
I was
And
there.
yeah, it was outrageous. I was driving to Lansing every week for like 8 weeks on end for these committee hearings,
I
um,
remember.
and and we would just sit there for hours on end without them allowing us to testify. So Tom contacted me and asked, "Hey, do you want to file a lawsuit against the whole Michigan legislature for violating our First Amendment rights and also the Open Meetings Act?" Because when you look at the Open Meetings Act, there are certain rules and requirements for how committee hearings are supposed to be held, and I felt like it was a pretty good opportunity to at least challenge the process by which the bills passed. The hope was that a judge would come in and say, "Yeah, these bills were passed illegally." We haven't gotten that. We haven't gotten that ruling yet. But what we did get, this was late 2023. We got a judge, a court of claims judge, though he did not file an injunction against us and ultimately didn't rule with us. He admitted that the Michigan House violated the Opens Meeting Act, and that he was expecting that the Michigan House, after recognizing what they did was wrong, would start, would do a course correction of things. So, fast forward, we've been kind of waiting to see, based on our appeals, to see what they're going to have or what's going to happen next. And we actually have a hearing next in April on our lawsuit. So what's going to come next is anyone's guess. Ultimately, when you get into legislative procedure in these kinds of lawsuits, the courts are usually hesitant. But it's not a small thing to have a court say the legislature violated the law. Ultimately, he didn't do anything about it at the time. But again, this, people would ask, well, why even bother with this? Well, look, if we just let our enemies get away with every time that they trample on our rights, they're just going to keep doing it. You have to fight them for every inch that they try to take, or they're going to take a mile. And we believe, Tom Lambert and I believe that later in the year, when they started holding more gun control hearings, they ultimately started allowing us to testify again. We believe that this was a direct result of them responding to the lawsuit, realizing that, hey, this could get muddy if they continue in the current course. So we'll see what happens with this upcoming hearing on the lawsuit.
Okay, that's good. And I appreciate you guys doing that. And this just goes to show one of the quickest things my viewers always say is this needs to go to the court. Why aren't people suing? Well, look, we had two very, very small gun rights groups on the scope of things. You guys don't have money that some of the very recognizable national organizations might have. And this is costing money, obviously, but 2 years later, you're still going through it. So suing isn't one of those like just snap your fingers for $5 and it's over in a week. Like,
yeah,
these lawsuits are very arduous. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that, Micah, because there is this thought in the gun rights community that all we have to do is just rely on the courts. The courts will save us. Look, it's almost been 3 years now since the Bruin decision, and all of us were hoping in the gun rights community that every gun control law was going to fall like dominoes. National Association for Gun Rights filed multiple lawsuits against assault weapons bans. We thought that was going to be, a walk in the park. But we're still 3 years into this, and we can't get the Supreme Court to pick up the Snope case, which should knock down every assault weapons ban in America. So it's multi-pronged. Again, like, lawsuits are time consuming, they are costly, and they expose you to a level of risk as well. Because if you file a lawsuit and the courts rule against you, you could be on the hook for the court costs, for the court fees. So that's where the easiest thing to do, and easy is a very relative term, is to try to stop the bills before they become law. And that's what we did back in 2023. We spent tens of thousands of dollars, working to mobilize gun owners, to put pressure on the legislature. And we believe that we dragged out the battle for weeks on end because we made the Democrats very nervous. And ultimately, what we heard from inside resources is that we so politically bludgeoned the Democrats that they didn't want to touch a major piece of gun control again, because of the beating that they took on that issue. And ultimately, four Democrats lost their political careers over it, and that sends a message. You make every attempt that they have to take away your gun rights as politically painful and toxic as possible. It's like a kid touching a hot stove. Maybe they won't do it next time.
True. And I was just fairly recently, within the past 2 weeks, I talked to two Democrat reps in the Michigan House. And yeah, they said the same thing that you just paraphrased. They said, look, at a certain point, some of us just went to leadership and said, this just has to stop. We can't keep going any further. Enough's enough. And that was because of this pressure. And I'm going to end with this. So, look, guys, joining a local gun rights group like Great Lakes Gun Rights. First of all, I endorse. I highly recommend. It doesn't cost that much for a year. You can donate more if you do have extra money. Check the pinned comment. And how I actually met Brendan face to face is we were both going up to the Capitol a lot, 2023, all the way through present. And I'd see him, and he'd have a helper sometimes by yourself. I remember one day you had to rent like a whole big truck because you brought in so many tens and hundreds of thousands of petitions from constituents of these reps, and we'd pass each other in the halls. We'd see each other in reps' offices, and that is actually, I think, the court of public opinion on the internet's great too, but actually going to the Capitol, having meetings with your rep, with Brendan stacking. I mean, there'd be reps. You remember those pictures they'd share with stacks of your petitions up over their windowsill?
Yeah.
that stuff is actually probably more effective in many cases than lawsuits, right?
Yeah, well, what I can say is that in the early days after the Michigan State shooting, we were really concerned about there being a rhino stampede. A lot of Republicans.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of phone calls and trying to figure out how many Republicans are going to lose on these various gun control bills. And those petitions helped stiffen the spines of countless Republicans. I had so many of them contacting me and saying, "Hey, I'm with you. I'm not going to vote for any of it," and like they were convinced that like I thought that they were against the Second Amendment. I mean, in some cases, I wasn't sure because I don't. There's some of them I just don't trust. But I had one senator. I won't. He'll remain nameless. When I dropped petitions in his office, he was running around the Senate office building trying to find me. He wanted to talk to me so bad to
Yeah.
make sure that I knew that he was with us. And again, it's keeping our side on the right side. Politically speaking, Republicans generally are the pro-gun party. Of course, there was a time here in Michigan when we had pro-gun Democrats, but if you're losing
Yeah.
Republicans, you're there. You're going to lose, and so you have to shore up your base and make sure. And thankfully, we didn't lose any Republicans on red flag. We didn't lose any Republicans on universal gun licensing. We lost 5 on mandatory storage. And, there's a couple other laws too. The misdemeanor gun ban, we lost a handful of Republicans too. But, you know, on those major fights, if you don't, if you aren't there to make sure that the people who say that they're supposed to be with you, to make sure that they stay on your side, you're going to lose them. I mean, in 2018, when Florida passed their red flag law, 67 A-rated NRA A-rated Republicans voted for red flag gun confiscation and waiting periods and banning gun ownership between 18 to 20 years of age. Rick Scott was the governor then, an A plus NRA rated governor, and
Yeah.
that's how many 67 in Florida. Now that's changed some then. Obviously, DeSantis is calling for the repeal of red flag. He wasn't the governor when it passed, so kudos
Yeah.
to him for calling for the repeal of it. But to have that many lose that many Republicans on that versus in Michigan, it's no small thing that not a single Republican voted for red flag just 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of your efforts. It's getting good to have you back on and catch up. We'll have to do it again soon. And look, guys, like I said, Great Lakes Gun Rights is making a difference. I'm not a paid spokesman. They're not a sponsor. I'm just literally giving you guys a shout out. Check the
Appreciate that.
pinned comments for ways to support them. And also this channel, guys. Look, this is grassroots. You're not hearing an ad read at the beginning of this channel. And I've been going up to Lansing to make as much difference as I possibly can. So check out the links down in the description. Ways you can help keep the 2A EDU channel going in all of our efforts. All right, man. It's been a good talk. Is there anything else you want to throw out there real quick?
Yeah, there is something to keep an eye on happening in the Michigan State Senate in this next week. Senate Bill 111.
Yeah.
It's a gun confiscation expansion bill. They're trying to use the PPO process to basically, under the guise of protecting elders, to allow more gun confiscation without due process. Just even purchasing a firearm can trigger a PPO, which then gets your rights suspended. Yeah, this is a nasty bill. It's getting a committee hearing next week on Tuesday. So yeah, it's one to be aware of. Call your senator, let them know to tell them to vote no on it.
I agree, man. All right, cool. I will talk to you soon, Brendan.
All right, thanks, Micah.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching and have a good one.